A young black waitress in a restaurant uniform, a wealthy man used to turning people into his personal toys, and a dusty piano thought to be just decoration. Everyone in the room felt sorry for the girl, just another prey caught in a powerful man's game. But no one could have imagined how the whole thing would flip on its head. His smug grin shattered by nothing but the talent she had buried deep. And every gaze in that room now fixed on her like a flame that had just caught fire. That evening, Bellview restaurant, a hotspot in Atlanta's financial district, was packed before sunset. Investors, politicians, influencers, all gathering to eat big, talk loud, and post louder. In the corner stood a glossy grand piano, untouched for years. It looked more like expensive furniture than a living instrument. Ava, a 24-year-old waitress, quietly weaved between luxury suits with a tray in hand. She was invisible, like everything else from the lower floors of society. But what no one knew is that she once was the angel of the night at a small South Side church, where her music made entire pews fall silent with emotion. Vincent Langley walked in at 7:42 p.m. A seasoned investor, gray suit sharp, Patek watch peaking just enough to flex. He entered like the whole restaurant was his personal stage. Behind the bar, a whisper among staff. Keep away from that table, he's never nice to anyone. Beside him were a few rich friends, loud laughs, louder egos, the kind who think money buys everyone's smile. And Ava? She wasn't one to perform for tips. She had learned how to hold her breath around men like them, how to step back instead of react, not out of fear, but out of survival. How many times have we seen people like Ava, immigrants, service workers, dark-skinned, turned into public entertainment? A flirty comment, a mocking request, a condescending stare. Sometimes it doesn't take a slap to hurt. Just being treated as less than is enough. But tonight's story won't follow that tired script. No, nobody in that room knew the person they looked down on was about to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. Not with arguments, not with outrage, but with something that would make the entire room rise to its feet. The sound of piano still lingered in the air at Bellevue. But to understand why it carried that much weight, we have to go back behind the spotlight, to a time when Ava Morgan meant nothing to the world, except a line of numbers on a government aid file. Ava grew up in a crumbling apartment block by the train tracks in South Atlanta, where the morning whistle of freight cars woke up hundreds of kids before their alarms even tried. Her mother, Letitia, cleaned floors on the night shift at the city hospital. Her father died in a construction accident when she was just 4. No insurance, no time to mourn long. Bills didn't wait. Ava's childhood didn't come with a bedroom or cafeteria lunch money, but it came with something quieter: music. One day, Mr. Murphy, the old man next door, handed her a dusty electronic keyboard. "Can't play anymore. My hands shake. But you hum tunes like you've got something to say." Every afternoon, Ava sat with that broken organ. Only 4 keys still worked. She taught herself songs from TV by ear, from cereal jingles to cooking show intros. And for the broken keys, she imagined the missing notes. For Ava, music didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be real. In 6th grade, she entered a small school music contest. She borrowed a Casio from the music teacher and practiced in the library. She won. That cheap silver certificate and the applause that came with it were the first time she felt heard. But then, nothing happened. No scholarships, no invitations. No teacher pulled her mom aside and said, "This girl has something. She needs support." Because in underfunded public schools, even the teachers are just trying to survive. And music doesn't make it onto the list of battles worth fighting. According to Pew Research Center 2018, only 9% of low-income Black children have access to private music instruction. Among middle-class white families, 47%. It wasn't that Ava didn't try. It wasn't that her mother didn't care. But when rent costs more than your paycheck, anything non-essential gets left behind. Still, Ava kept playing. No formal training, no mentor, but every key she pressed was a sentence no one had asked her to speak. She once told her best friend, "I don't dream of being famous. I just don't want to leave music behind, the way my dad got left behind on that scaffold." Most talent doesn't die from laziness. It dies from lack of space to grow. And Ava, though unseen, kept carving out that space for herself, whether in a cramped bedroom or during the long graveyard shifts at Bellview.
Bellview wasn't the kind of restaurant where people ate to feel full. It was where people came to be seen, to be heard, to prove they'd arrived. Glossy black hardwood floors. Abstract paintings hung slightly off-center but priced higher than used cars. Regulars ordered dishes by the chef's name, not by their ingredients. "I'll take the salmon, Raphael's version, but go easy on the pepper." Ava got hired at 22, not because of a polished resume. She had a high school diploma and a few bakery jobs under her belt. But the morning shift lead quit suddenly, and she was willing to take the night shift. And night shifts at Bellview? Not everyone survived them. It meant pouring water for table 4 without holding eye contact for more than 2 seconds, holding your breath when a guest asked, "So, where are you from?" half curious, half condescending, and sometimes picking up pieces of your dignity after being barked at in front of a whole room while still smiling. But Ava chose Bellview for a reason. She knew there was a grand Steinway piano tucked in the corner, and according to a former chef, no one's dared touch that thing in 3 years. That was enough reason for her to apply. What no one knew was that after every shift, once the lights dimmed, she would quietly sit at that piano, just for a few minutes. No performance, no audience, no rules, just her. Some nights she played A Song for Mama by Boyz II Men. Some nights a bit of Chopin's Nocturne, though she only remembered the beginning. Some nights she didn't play at all, just laid her hands on the keys and breathed. Because sometimes just touching your dream is enough to survive the day. To diners, Bellview was a place to flaunt power, but for Ava, it was a place to endure, and the only place that still held the one piece of her she'd never let go: music. This contrast made Bellview strange, a place where people talked money while Ava could barely afford ramen. A place where guests snapped their fingers to summon her, while she used those same fingers to create music. A place where power was measured in receipts, while Ava measured her life in melodies. Outside, no one saw it. Ava always smiled at the right moments, avoided eye contact, moved like a shadow among expensive suits. No one saw her, but the piano did. And on that night, when one man thought he could turn her into a punchline, that same piano would become the place she stood tall. No mic, no permission, just the chance to play. 7:42 p.m. The revolving glass door spun slowly, then stopped. Vincent Langley walked in. Golden light caught the shine of his Italian leather shoes. His gray pinstripe suit fit like a second skin. A Patek Philippe peeked from beneath his sleeve, and a smirk curled on his lips, just enough to make the doorman avoid eye contact. Vincent needed no introduction. In Atlanta, if you worked in finance, you knew him. If you worked in food and beverage, you feared him. And if you were a server, you prayed he sat at someone else's table. 3 men followed him. Same haircut, same watches, same rehearsed laughter. Their handshakes reeked of power deals. Their jokes carried that "we're better" undertone. Behind the bar, a staff member whispered, "Here we go again." Vincent chose the center table, most visible, most commanding. Ordered a Macallan 25, neat, didn't ask the price, and began to take over the room. He talked loud, laughed louder, scanned the place like a director scouting his stage. Every joke had a target, someone too low in status to clap back. "Had a meeting with the mayor yesterday," he said. "Man doesn't know a damn thing about money." Ava was assigned to his table. She walked over with a water tray, eyes down, voice soft, manner polite. Vincent glanced at her name tag, then gave her the slow, unapologetic once-over. "Ava," he stretched out the name. "Sounds like an artist. You play music?" Ava hesitated. A little." "Perfect," he smiled. But it wasn't a kind smile. "We'll be needing some entertainment tonight. Hope you're ready." Ava gave a faint smile, said nothing, turned away like she hadn't heard. But Vincent had already locked in. Not because she was pretty, not because she was talented, but because he smelled silence, and he liked to break it. Vincent wasn't the type to insult out loud. He simply put people in uncomfortable positions and watched them squirm. Ava, with her black apron and careful eyes, was the perfect target for a game he'd played far too many times. No one in the room sensed what was coming. Only Ava, walking back to the kitchen, felt her heart skip a beat. She'd seen men like this before. This wasn't the first time. But this time, she wouldn't walk away like before. This time, he would learn something. And that piano in the corner, it would be her chalkboard. The entrees had just been served when Vincent leaned forward, resting his arms on the table. His voice wasn't loud, but loud enough for nearby tables to start listening. "So, Ava," he said, "I think we could use a little entertainment tonight. And I hear you play piano." Ava stood still, keeping her polite smile. "I used to play a bit, but right now I'm on duty." "On duty?" Vincent chuckled. "Well then, serve us a song. That's a kind of service, isn't it?" The mood at the table shifted. This wasn't playful banter anymore. This was a social test. What would the waitress do when asked to perform? Ava gripped the tray in her hands a little tighter. "I don't think that would be appropriate during my shift." Vincent leaned back, arms folded. "Ah, I see. I just wanted to see if people like you actually know how to play, or just know how to daydream and cry poor." A sharp oof came from a nearby table. One of Vincent's friends mock-clapped. Someone else whistled. Ava didn't flinch, but her eyes changed, no longer dodging his. Vincent smiled wider, then casually raised a hand. 30 seconds later, the night shift manager walked over. "Is there a problem, Mr. Langley?" "Not exactly," Vincent replied. "I just asked if this young lady could play us something on the piano. She seems less than enthusiastic." The manager glanced at Ava, hesitated, then sighed and said gently, "Ava, if you really do know how to play, just one piece, for fun." The whole restaurant now felt like a theater, seconds before the curtain lifted. All eyes were on her. No one spoke. No one stepped in to say no on her behalf. Ava looked at Vincent, then at the piano in the corner. Something inside her flickered. Not anger, but something heavier. Fate. She thought of her mother, of the cracked kitchen tiles, the peeling walls, and that phrase that felt like a spell cast over her life. You don't have to scream to be seen. Just don't lower your head. Ava lifted her chin, spoke slow and steady, as if each word was a note pressed down.
"All right, I'll play. Just one piece." No applause, no cheers, but everyone in the room knew, from that moment on, the game no longer belonged to Vincent.
Ava walked slowly toward the piano. Each step felt heavy, like stone. Not because she was afraid, but because she knew, after tonight, she would either be swallowed whole or never be invisible again. The room fell into complete silence. No background music, no glasses clinking. Even the manager stood frozen by the bar, holding his breath. Ava sat down, placed both hands on the keys. The piano felt cool, like an old friend she hadn't touched in years. She closed her eyes. No showmanship, no forced drama. Just her and the piece she once played the night her mother was rushed to the hospital. Nocturne Op. 9, No. 2, Chopin. Too quiet for a stage, but enough to tell her whole life story without a single word. The first note drifted out, soft as memory's fingertip. The second, hesitant, trembling like morning breath on a cold day. Then came the stream, unrushed, unprovoked, whispering through the room like a voice only the soul could hear. The back of the restaurant went still. Silverware froze mid-air. A few guests straightened up, as if afraid to disturb something sacred. Ava didn't look at anyone. She looked inward. Each key she touched held the calluses in her mother's palms. Each pause held the nights she fell asleep on the back of a city bus. Each deep press of a note was the sigh of a dream no one ever called by name. And she wasn't playing to prove anything. She was playing to keep the part of her that the world hadn't yet stolen. Midway through, the piece swelled, faster, fuller, like her heart spilling itself in sound. A woman across the room raised a hand to her mouth. The man beside her nodded slowly. No one dared move. Vincent, silent, no smirk, no words. That arrogant curl on his lip, gone. And then, the final passage. Ava lowered her hands with care. One last note, gentle like a farewell. The sound faded into the air, like smoke, like one last breath. Silence. No applause right away. Not because they didn't want to, but because no one had yet returned to reality. Then, a single clap. Then two. Then the whole room. Not polite clapping, not forced, but the kind that happens when something inside you shifts. A few guests stood up. A man set his glass down and whispered, "That wasn't just music. I saw a story in that. It felt real." Ava stayed seated, head slightly bowed, hands still resting on the keys. No smile, no nod, just stillness, like her music still lingered there, filling the space where words didn't belong. From that moment on, no one looked at Ava the same way again. Ava rose from the piano. No bow, no smile. She walked across the room like no one had ever dared challenge her. She returned to Vincent's table, set down his glass of water with a calm that felt dangerous. Vincent remained seated, expression flat. Arms crossed, he scoffed. "I thought you'd do something a bit more entertaining." A strange silence blanketed the room. One guest frowned. Another turned their head, uncomfortable, unwilling to hear more. The mood had shifted. No one was siding with him anymore. Not because they adored Ava, but because he just tried to dismiss something they genuinely felt. One man at his table, the one sitting at the edge, muttered, "Vincent, enough. She played beautifully." Vincent snapped, sharper than before. "You're getting emotional. No need to turn this into some kind of sacred event." Then, a voice from across the room cut through. "Sacred or not, at least she had the guts to face a whole room. All you do is sit and tear people down." The words weren't loud, but they hit like thunder in that tense air. Vincent turned, scanning the crowd for the speaker. No one claimed it. The whole room had quietly turned against him. He stood up, raised his glass, forced a smile. "I guess I just prefer jazz over Chopin. Everyone's got their taste, right?" No one laughed. No one clapped. He placed the glass back down, harder than necessary. It rolled slightly, then stilled. A server approached, instinctively reaching to adjust it, but backed away. Ava stood there, still facing him, saying nothing. She didn't need to. The entire room had spoken for her. As she walked away, the eyes that followed her weren't filled with pity anymore, but with respect. Vincent sat there, alone at the table that once commanded attention. The friend beside him slowly pushed his chair back. "I'm gonna call the car. Feels a little stuffy in here." And, just like that, the man who once controlled every game became the final punchline to his own joke. 2 days after the night no one could forget, Bellview lit up again. Ava stood behind the water station, hair tied back, uniform crisp, as if nothing had ever happened. But the way people looked at her had changed. No more curiosity, no more pity, just quiet respect. At around 8:40 p.m., an older man walked in. Gray hair, long trench coat, slow but upright posture. He didn't have a reservation, didn't say much. He simply chose the table closest to the piano. Ava was assigned his table. She set down his water, and he looked up with a soft smile. "Thursday night. You were the one who played Chopin, weren't you?" Ava nodded gently. The man reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded, yellowing sheet of music. At the top, handwritten in fountain pen, "Troubled River." "I wrote this almost 30 years ago," he said. "Not many people can play it. A few tried, but none could feel the heartbeat underneath." He paused, then added, "I think you should try." Ava didn't ask questions. She took the sheet with both hands, like something too sacred to treat casually. The lights near the bar were dimmer than usual. There was no scheduled pianist that evening, and the Steinway stood there, waiting, as if it knew this moment would come. Ava walked toward it. No one asked her to. No one noticed at first, but 3 notes in, the entire room was already listening. Troubled River wasn't flashy. It was deep, broken, like the sound of someone still alive but missing pieces of themselves. In one section, her right hand climbed high, then dropped, like a waterfall hitting rock. Her left hand held down a single, repeating chord, like the endless nights she lay awake listening to freight trains roll by. She didn't know. The old man behind her had removed his glasses and was now wiping them with his sleeve. Not for dust, but because his vision had gone blurry. When the piece ended, Ava rose without a word. She returned the sheet music to his table, as if to say, "I've returned what you gave me," in my own voice. The man didn't stand. He nodded once, then said, "This Sunday night, I host a private class at my home. No flyers, no fees. If you come, I'll teach you." Ava looked at him, didn't smile, but in her eyes, for the first time in a long time, there was hope. "I'll come," she said, "not because I'm chasing a dream, but because I can't not play anymore." He nodded again. Then, before leaving, he added a final line, not like someone giving a gift, but like a man who just rediscovered something he thought was lost. Music doesn't need stars. It needs people who play to survive. Like you. Ever since Ava played Troubled River, Bellview had not been the same. 3 days later, the manager called her to the office. Not for a warning, not to discuss behavior, but to say one sentence. "Ava, these hands, they're not meant for cleaning. They were born to touch the keys." That very night, her name was printed on Bellview's official performance schedule. Live piano, Ava Morgan, 8:30 p.m. nightly. She no longer served tables. No more uniforms. No more standing in anyone's shadow. Her pay? Triple what it used to be.
Guests didn't just come to Bellevue to dine anymore. They came to be quiet. Every night when Ava took her seat at the Steinway, the lights dimmed just slightly. She didn't speak, didn't smile for attention. She simply played, as if the world itself was listening to its own heartbeat through her fingers. One guest from Japan once told the manager, "I've heard Ruichi Sakamoto live, but Ava's sound, there's something closer in it. It reminds me I was once a child who dared to dream." No ads, no social media campaigns, but Bellevue was booked every night, not because of spotlight, but because of the light that radiated from the one person they once thought was invisible. Ava still lived in the same small apartment at the end of the block, still walked home every night. But now she knew she wasn't just the girl who plays well. She was the one who held silence for those never given the chance to speak. Under the old musician's guidance, Ava changed day by day, no longer playing on instinct alone, but with knowledge, with discipline, with depth. She learned the architecture of classical pieces, the breath behind every phrase, how to tell stories through sound instead of speech. Each night, she still played at Bellevue, but once a month she left the city, performing in small music halls across the state. That October, Ava entered the National Piano Competition. No promotion, no expectations, just a quiet test for herself. Her piece was unlike any other, a blend of Chopin, jazz, and her own bold interpretations. She called it Voice Without Echo. When the final note faded, the hall fell silent. A judge whispered, "She didn't just play music, she told an entire life story with her hands." Result: Ava Morgan, first prize national champion. A few local papers picked up the story, but Ava gave no interviews. She didn't seek the spotlight. She simply returned to Bellevue, sat at the same piano, and continued leading listeners into another world, note by note. That night, at the corner table, the one where everything began, Vincent Langley showed up again. But this time, no swagger, no smug remarks. He just sat quietly and listened. The whole night. When Ava stepped out the back door after her set, he was waiting. No bodyguards, no hat. Just a single sentence, slow and sincere. "I was wrong to dismiss your talent. You're extraordinary." Ava looked at him for a moment, then smiled, calm and composed. "I'm not angry. Actually, I'm grateful, because without what you did that night, I wouldn't be who I am now." Vincent gave a small nod, a quiet smile. "Would it be all right if I came to hear you play again?" Ava nodded gently, then walked away, hands tucked in her coat pockets, but heart lighter than it had ever been. Because some music doesn't play to entertain. It plays to keep a soul whole in a world that forgets to care. And some victories don't need a stage. They just need to be true enough to silence those who once looked down.